Hello, internet friends. I am Regular Menthol. That is my legal name. And today I'm going to show you how I made these realistic looking trash bags in Houdini using Vellum. So this is going to be more of a walkthrough than a full-blown tutorial, but I'm going to provide a link to the project files so you can poke around on your own and get in there and see what's going on. Also, I'm going to be giving away a little HDA I made as part of this to generate the actual contents of the bag called the Blobmaker. And the texture, which you can see here, sort of reflecting off the in the bump channel, just kind of giving a nice little crinkly look. Now, these trash bags, in my opinion, I would call a work in progress. But I thought I would post this just because I think it's a good starting point if you're trying to make a trash bag. And, you know, honestly, like, if you can do something better than this, then that's great. Send it to me so I can use it too. Okay, so just a little overview. Obviously, in real life, the way a trash bag works is you take a bag and then you fill it slowly with trash, you know, until it's full or it smells bad, at which point you replace and start the process over again. But here, we're actually going to do the opposite. We're going to start with all the trash already pre-thrown out, and then we're just going to wrap a bag around that. So it's like a workflow that you would see if you were using something like Marvelous Designer and you're trying to build clothing. Essentially, we're clothing a pile of goop that, you know, instead of clothes, it's a plastic bag. But it's the same principle. It kind of stitches together in midair using magical magnets. And yeah, so basically, we're going to do all this with the Vellum Drape tool. And let's get her going. All right, so we are in Houdini here, and let's get started making this trash. So we're going to start with the actual trash itself. And just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use my Blobmaker HGA. This is definitely not necessary. You can make this shape, just making this here with any way you want. For me, I just built this tool because I wanted to iterate through trash bags. So this was just a quick way to make many variations. So I'll just go through it quickly. I mean, again, you can grab it with the file or just do your own thing, up to you. So basically, this is just based off of a tube, as Houdini calls it, a cylinder essentially, and you can adjust the radius here. You can adjust the height. Oh, that's not scaling properly. Actually, it wasn't working properly, so I just started over. You can adjust the height here, and then just some simple distortion controls, like so. Make that. And then we have this thing called the bottom bar. I found with trash, where's it? Hang on, there we go. Trash bags generally are sort of heavier at the bottom, at least that's sort of the classic look. So you can use this to sort of achieve that look if you want. You can toggle it. And then we have this thing called the center tube. And this basically, when you sim, the bag is going to sort of converge on this point here. So if you just want to keep some space in there and you don't want it to converge against itself, you can adjust these radius controls and just basically maintain a hole at the top if you want. It's optional. And then moving across here, it's pretty self-explanatory. We got these small lumps, and those basically are just going to add randomized lumps, you know, to this thing. And you can change the, there's scaling controls down here, the scale min, the scale max. This is controlling the randoms, and then you've got these. And then you also have these filter controls. Sometimes when you have like sometimes you'll have a chunk at the top you don't like and it's too tall for the rest of the bag, so you take down the upper, or there's one sticking out of the bottom and it's going through, you know, the ground, so you could delete them this way, the upper and lower, like so. Everything else pretty solid, you know, there's noise and all types of ways to play with them. You can also choose the base shapes here. You can use Utah teapots if you want. Actually, those look kind of cool. I'm going to leave that, and tetrahedron, turn these down a little bit. And the large chunks are literally the same thing. There's a few less scaling controls. This is just to get these like big, chunky. Sometimes, you know, you'll see a garbage bag or a trash bag and it's just got this giant sort of thing protruding from it, like someone threw out this, you know, just threw out this giant thing. Anyways, so we can also just change those, and there we go. And then we just down here have some final controls. Sometimes I usually actually end up scaling the Z or whichever our clothing is going to come from this direction from either side. So sometimes you just want to scale that into and just allow it to wrap around a bit better. Yeah. Oh, and then there's also the option to put in custom geometry here. So you can just pipe in whatever you want. You know, if there's like one specific thing you're trying to accomplish, like you want a lump, you know, exactly here, then this will, you know, you can feed in whatever you want. Again, if you want to use the Utah teapot, now's your chance. Yeah, so that's that. That's the Blobmaker, and let's move on to the actual bag. Okay, so let's get into the actual bag. So basically, like you can see here, the way this works is we're going to set up basically two pieces of fabric, and those pieces are going to be drawn to each other via magical forces. And you can see here where the stitches are going to seam together to create a single geometry. So we can walk through how to set that up. It's pretty easy, but there's a couple weird little things. So here's the grid, and it's pretty dense, 150 by 150. You can see it's pretty detailed here. And that's just, you know, high res, I guess. That's for a more detailed result. You can obviously scale that to your needs. So I'm actually using quads on this one. And a lot of times with Vellum, they tell you to use triangles, which I was doing initially, but I found that quads actually worked better for the shape that I was kind of going for. Like the rolls of the wrinkles seemed to form better with quads. The triangles are really jaggy. They just didn't look good. And that's something that I learned on a sort of a breakdown. And also I'll get back to this, but yeah, so there's the grid. I just always put a null in case I want to switch this. I don't have to rewire everything, you know. UVs, normals, and then this is sort of where the trick happens here. So we have the one initial grid here on the left, and we've created this group. And I just kept it to group 1 because, you know, whatever. And so this group is unshared edges, included by edges, unshared edges. And unshared edges obviously are just these edges that don't share any other edges or primitives or anything. They're lonely, you know. So that creates all this, right? But we don't want this top seam here because we want this bag to be open at the top. So I created this second group node here, and you'll see that it's removing these top pieces. And the way that you do that is actually you specify the group that you want to work on, that group that was created here. And then in the initial merge, you just select subtract from existing, and that'll subtract whatever points you select down here. And these points are being selected by this bounding box, which is just sort of set up to react to the size of the grid. So if I change the grid size, this box moves with it. Pretty easy. And then so by default, this would be, as you see here, the size of the grid X, but then the problem is you would deselect this node point, and then when it comes together, you'd have this little hangy bit. So the way that you do that, obviously, is you scale it in a bit, and the way that you can do that, programmatically, so you don't have to adjust it all the time, is you can do this trick, which I actually also learned from the same tutorial as the quad thing, which is, actually, I pulled it up. This right here, this Houdini hive with Andriy Bilichenko. This man right here is a frickin' G, and he's awesome at what he does. And yeah, you should watch this and take notes. It's pretty amazing what he's able to pull off. So basically the trick is you run this convert line node, which basically calculates the rest length or the length of edges. And then what you do is you actually promote that. This is a primitive attribute. And what you do is you promote it to from primitive to detail. And then the promotion method, you choose average. So you actually get an average distance of how far or how big these polygons are. And we're just using quads, so you don't actually need the average. You could just do any of these and they'd be the same. But if you're doing something like with tries and you're remeshing, then the average becomes a more valuable value. So yes, so we have this detail attribute here. We can see the rest length 0.005, so that's about 5.5 millimeters apart, which actually in his talk, Andriy says that everything should be about 3 to 4 millimeters apart. So I hope that he can forgive me for that, but I actually tried it at a higher resolution and the sim sort of fell apart. So I just probably could figure out why that's happening, but I actually kind of like the way it looks now. So I just left it. Anyway, so you take this rest length detail and you can basically just grab it here in the group node. So what this is going to do, where is this? It's going to look at the rest length, which is from here to here, and then subtract it. But it's going to subtract it from the center. So basically what you do is you subtract half of the rest length from each side. Essentially, you basically just deselect the endpoints. And there's no chance that you'll ever deselect this point by accident as well. Or, yeah, select, whatever. I don't know. You know what I'm saying. This will always keep it correct. And then the rest of the sides are just super tiny, whatever. Okay. And then over here, we have the mirrored version, right? So we've got two. The original and the mirror. And then on the mirror, basically doing the same thing. Create this unshared edges group, removing those center points, and then merging it all back together. So now we actually have two groups of the same thing. And the nice thing about this technique is that when you get down to the Vellum, what is it called, drape? Vellum Drape. These points will correspond to each other really nicely because they're essentially, the same points. And that can be an issue if that's not working. One thing you do have to keep in mind, one thing you do have to keep in mind when you mirror is to uncheck keep original. Otherwise, this is going to keep both. And then you're going to create these groups and then you're going to merge it back together and you're going to have two copies of this one. And it's not going to work, long story short. So just make sure to check that. Okay, and then we can go down here and we're going to start creating our groups for Vellum Constraints. So this group here is called Elastic. This basically is going to be the top elastic bits that we want to essentially suck together, create some kind of tension that pulls on the rest of the bag. You could think if you were tying a knot at the top, you'd be pulling on these top parts and, essentially tightening the rest of the bag from the top. And that's really what I found makes a trash bag looks like a trash bag, is that tension. So this is probably the most important group here. And I've actually sent this through these bounding, these are being selected by this bounding object. So you basically can feed in a separate object here, and I created this, just to give it some breakup and some variation. You can just have it by box. I had it like that, as you can see. The thing is, it just makes it a little more uniform. It doesn't look as natural, I found, but it did still look cool. So you can totally do that as well if that works better. And then I created these groups called elastic light. So you're going to see in a bit, but essentially the elastic at the top has a very strong force that sucks it together, right? It's the strongest force. It's probably even like unnaturally strong. But then I realized that, these other seams here, and I did the same thing with the subtraction at the top there. These other seams here also need a little bit of tension, but not as much as this. So as we move down into the constraints here, you can see this is the elastic constraint, and basically the wrestling scale is just ridiculously low. Like, it's stupid. I don't even think that makes physical sense. And the reason for that is, you'll see as it sims, is it just completely draws in on itself and creates the type of tension that is necessary. Whereas the elastic light, so this is at 0.01. Wait, what is this at? Oh yeah, this is at 0.75. This is the elastic light. 0.75, whereas this one is at 0.001, right? So it's like a much less strong attracting force. So these are the elastics. I mean, there's nothing too crazy in these constraints, I'm going to be honest. Like, there's no like real wizardry or anything like that. There's no plasticity. I'll put the bend here. I don't even think I did anything with that. And then this here is this is where most of the magic happens. But again, it's not even that crazy. All I really did was enable plasticity so that when it bends, it keeps the shape. So if it bends beyond this threshold, which I can't figure out if this is supposed to be high or low, but it seems to be working, then at this speed, 10, which is a really fast speed, it will adapt to its current new bend. And because the hardening is above 1, it will actually harden. So it'll be harder after it changes than it was before it changed. So you could think of it as like, I don't know, dropping some kind of paint and then the paint dries, but incredibly quickly. And that's not obviously how garbage bags behave, but if you want real life, what are you doing on your computer, right? This is a fantastical bag. Yeah, so I think that's actually... Oh, and one other thing with these is I set the... I don't know if it's supposed to be that low, but I set the mass and the thickness just too ridiculously low. I just found it looked... I just found it looked cool, and it just looked better, so I went for it. I might need to revisit those values looking at them again, but it works for now. And then we are down to the main event here, the Vellum Drape, and we can see our blob from before in there in the visualization. Yeah, so again with the Blobmaker, you can see like you always want the blob to be, obviously in the bounds of the thing, the cloths, and you can obviously make the cloths bigger, but it's whatever you want. And then this he's a chunky little guy. Take him in a bit. He might be too high. Oops. Bring him down. And there's a lot of tweaking at this phase. You know, we'll sim it one time and then maybe see what else we can do. And whatever. I actually might make this less high. 485. And we'll move it on. What axis is that? Oopsies. Still don't know which direction to go in. All right, that's that. And we'll just look at the Vellum Drape here. Again, there's not too much going on, but I did do some kind of, some little tweaks here. And I'm not going to super go into how to use this. It's pretty straightforward, and there's like tons and tons of tutorials on this. And there's some really good side effects masterclasses actually on this subject. So I'll post those. I'll post a couple links that I used in the description. But basically, the draping is here. You're going to want to hit weld, otherwise it's not going to do anything. You can do more than one seam. I just did one. Then you specify your groups, group 1 and group 2 from above, which you can see it's everything except the top here. And then this cycle is basically trying to figure out what's going on with your group. So when it starts, it's at 0, and usually you're going to need to like adjust this slightly. So mine was off by 3 points, which is pretty good. Sometimes it's like irreconcilable and you have to like rethink your entire life, and it's just super annoying, and yeah, it sucks. So that's why I tend to do the mirror method. But even that sometimes doesn't work. It's, you know, is what it is. This stuff, I think I tweaked these, but it's not super necessary. The solver, yada, yada, yada. This is all tweaking. I turned off gravity. I turned up velocity damping. Where's that one thing? Oh, welding frame delay. This is something that you're going to want to turn down. Basically, this like delays the number of frames before it attempts to weld. But I like to put it at 0, so it just welds like right off the bat. I think it just works better. It probably depends on the situation, but for this, it certainly works better. Yeah, so these are all, you know, these are Vellum solver settings, because this Vellum Drape is just an HDA that side effects put together basically to allow you to make clothing and do some more like modeling type procedures with more control. But if you right click on here and you, let's see, I already unlocked it, but I'm trying to figure out how. Well, let's see here. So when you drop it down, you see it has this lock, and that means if you go into it, everything's grayed out. But if you allow editing of contents, then it unlocks, and you can go in here and see. It's cool because you can see how it's built, but also it's cool because you can access the actual Vellum solver right here. And then if you dive in, it's just a Vellum solver. So by default, there's nothing in here. I think this is in here, and this and this. These 3 are in here. But you can then add all your things here. So these Vellum Constraints, I added this attach constraint. So this calculates each frame. You know, when you dive inside the Vellum solver, I actually don't even think this SOP exists anymore because I changed it, but I could put that back and have attaching things. I'm going to actually just skip that for now. But yeah, you can add an attach thing, call in a SOP if you want. I had it so the bag actually was sticking to the collision here. It was pretty cool, but actually I didn't even realize that was turned off, and it still looks fine. So I'm just going to leave it off. And then these 2 are just Papa tracks that are like jammed up. They're like super powerful. So I basically specified to not affect the elastic group, and that's only because the elastic group has its own, which is like super intense. So like the elastic group has a tractor that's sitting right here that just sucks all these particles like in super together to try and form like a solid closure at the top, because normally with a trash bag you would just tie a knot at the top, but this method does not involve tying a knot, even though I started thinking about it, and I think you probably could somehow get vellum to tie a knot, which I think would be really cool. But that's not how this one works. This one basically simulates we create the wrinkles and then we stick a knot on top and just, fake it. It's computer graphics. It's like 90% cheating and 10% lying. So yeah, you just got to make it look good, right? It doesn't actually have to be, again, it doesn't need to be a real trash bag because this is computer land. Yeah, so there's just a couple pop attractors, and it's a nice trick to be able to go in, because normally you would have to do this in the Vellum solver, but in this way you can dive in and do it right in the drape, which is nice. And then there's all this voodoo that's happening, and this is the cool thing about Houdini is there's so much Houdini nodes that are actually just built out of Houdini nodes, so you can just dive in and see how everything works, and yeah, very cool. All right, so let's actually sim this bad boy and see what he looks like, what they look like. Yeah, so you can see it just immediately pulls together. This top band is doing its elasticy thing. It's got that breakup that looks really nice. And you can see the bottom bar is filling out the bottom of the bag nicely. This blob builder is very simple, but it actually does quite a good job. Quite a good job. So yeah, so there's the gist of it. I mean, that looks pretty cool. Sure, why not? It's a trash bag, whatever. It's on the side of the road. You don't even notice it. And you know what? I actually, since I started making these trash bags, I have a newfound appreciation for their aesthetic beauty. These wrinkles, they're beautiful. They're incredible. Look at that. I mean, come on. That's nice. That looks nice. Yeah, so I mean that actually, okay, I lucked out. Don't have to do that more than once. And you can see it gets a little jaggy in here. It might be worthwhile to go in and lower don't even pay attention to that. That's fine. Everything's fine. But you also have the vellum post process right here, which you can use to subdivide. Sweet. And it looks like, pretty good. And then yada yada, just cleaning out all this garbage. Look at all this crap. Boom, it's gone. Keep the UVs. Add some new normals. Throw a material on there. Trash bag out. Peace. And so yeah, so then we can just red shift it up. I have this little scene conveniently set up that I've been rendering trash bags out of all week. So yes, bango. Come on, baby. You can see someone threw out this icosahedron here. Perfectly good icosahedron. And it looks pretty good. Oops. I mean, sure, why not? These wrinkles might be a bit strong. These are all I made a trash material, and I can show you that actually right now. I'll just go in. I'm just going to turn those down a bit. What is this? I don't even know what oh, yeah. I made it so that the it reads in the curvature and then only creates these wrinkles like where it's not curvy, because I just thought it'd be weird for the bag to be wrinkled like where it was stretched, you know what I mean? So yeah, so this texture actually is pretty simple. I built this all actually in cops, which is cool. It's sort of like Houdini's own little like substance designer, except it's not, you know, $20 a month and this huge software. I mean, I think Substance Designer and the Substance thing is cool. And I could definitely see if I was making like a video game or like a giant production and I needed all these variations, like how useful that would be. But for me, for my uses, I honestly kind of prefer just doing it in Houdini when it's just like something simple like this. It's just so much faster and nicer. This is all old stuff. I'm not even using this anymore. Yeah, so this basically is just a couple of these VopCop 2 Gen 4s, 2 gens, and this looks complicated, but really all it is these Voronoi noises just layered on top of each other. So if we go to, I'll just stop this. Well, looks pretty good, right? Good trash bag. All right, good trash. Nice trash. I'll give it a little whirl. Whirl around this trash. Oh, yeah. Sure. I'll take it. And then, of course, with the Blobmaker, you can just switch this up as much as if you want like a giant chunk right here, which I feel like it's kind of a little loosey-goose at the top here, but, you know, you can fix that up. Oh, no. I did that thing. Oh, crap. Oh, there we go. Okay. Sometimes Redshift will freeze my Houdini for no reason. I don't understand it. Yeah, so if we go bye to the composite view, you can see that there's this wavy thing, and this kind of gives it some ruffles, and then there's this other thing here, and that's, you can see the Voronois in here, and I just kind of distort them to make it more natural, give it a little blur, a little blurski. And then these guys, you zoom in there, again, you can see there's these Voronoi shapes and these hard angles here. And that sort of just gives it like, you know, trash baggy vibes. And then also I realized that trash bags, oops, is this even working? I don't even know if this is working, but there's like fold lines in trash bags. So I created those here. This is just a line pattern, but I think it's not strong enough right now. Stripes. Let's see. Will I see the stripes today? Who knows? I don't think so. Oh, there's kind of one in there. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't matter, but they're in there. Yeah, so that is that. I hope I didn't forget anything. I'm going to make this HIP file available so you guys can go in and scope it out. I actually probably won't include the cops just because, you know, can't give you everything on a silver platter, right? You got to figure out some of this stuff on your own. I basically showed it to you. You could just screen grab it. Yeah, but I'll give you the trash bag and the Blobmaker, and I'm actually going to output these textures, giving you some 4K textures so you guys can play with those. And, you know, if you want to create your own, you can contrast and compare. And if you do something better than me, then hook me up, man. Yeah, that's it. That's it for now. So hope you liked it. Hope it was useful. Yeah, ask me any questions you want in the comments. And if you make anything cool with it, send me a link. All right, that's it. Goodbye.